reactions have been flowing following the National Delegates Conference of the New Patriotic Party. Earlier today, I caught up with former Chief of Staff Kwadwo Mpiani, who has been speaking about the party's reorganization process so far. He's also been touching on calls on the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, to resign. Honorable Kwadwo Mpiani, thank you for talking to Joy News. We're just coming from that fiercely contested exercise, the National Delegates Conference of the New Patriotic Party. I'm sure that even if you were not at the venue, you have monitored what has transpired. What's your impression about, first of all, the reorganization process of the New Patriotic Party?
Reorganization of the New Patriotic, I'm not. I think this was a normal elections. I was there anyway. Okay. It was a normal 4-yearly elections where you elect the party, national party officers. So this is what we did last Saturday. If there's to be any reorganization, I believe it's left to the newly inducted officers to look at that. So for what we did last Saturday was purely for the election of national officers for the party.
Some would say that given this high level of contest that we've seen, there may be some faults within your rank. Obviously, there are some who are seeking to take up the national executive position. Some didn't make it, and so there'll be a need for some sort of reconciliation to take place within the NPP before you face that common threats of the NDC going into the 2024 elections. What's your take on reconciliation within the New Patriotic Party?
That one is very important. At the end of every election, I think it's incumbent on the victors, if I use advisedly, that is, those who were elected in those offices, to talk to the losers, bring them in. After all, it's for the party. And in an election, you're always going to have losers, winners, and losers. But if you want a good administration, if you want cohesion in the party, the leadership, those who were elected, it should be their duty to try to bring everybody on board. Initially, people will not be naturally disappointed, might have lost some monies here and there, and therefore egos bruised or something like that. So after some time, not too long a time, short time, 3-4 days, the victors, especially the chairman and the general secretary, should take it upon themselves to bring everybody on board.
There's this belief that we've never seen such a contest before. You've been around since the inception of the NPP. Would you say that this year's or this time around, what do you believe may be accounting for all of this?
Yeah, it was very keen. We've seen very keen elections before. I've been involved in some of them. This one was very keen. Right. There's no doubt about that. I think it was believed by some that the authority was backing some individuals. I have no proof of that. Right. But that was the belief of some people. And they believe that it should not be the responsibility of those in authority to do that. And therefore they wanted to show their independence and prove to everybody the people they like to be elected to stay
state affairs of the party.
Yeah.
And some say that resulted in some big casualties that we recorded on the night. For instance, the incumbent General Secretary, John Boydu, has lost his post. Yeah. He, going into the elections, made the claim that he's the most experienced, by far, party executive, competent enough to lead the party into the 2024 elections. It appears that by voting him out of office, the NPP could suffer a defeat in 2024.
No, the people didn't believe in what he said. Naturally, if I'm contesting for election, I want to use what I believe are my strong points to convince the people to vote for me. But he tried, and the people didn't believe in that. After all, when he became a general secretary, he had never been a general secretary before. But he was able to work for about 6 years or so. So the people looking at what is happening within the party believe that his argument was not the best, and therefore they decided to vote him out.
You don't think he was the most experienced to take up that job, going into that tough contest?
Experience in what sense? Experience in what sense? The general secretary, yes, you need to have an efficient general secretary. A general secretary who should be able to bring
everyone
all sides of the on board.
Right.
And those who contested him, I believe almost all of them have been in the party for some time. They have held positions within the party, youth organizer, MP, and whatnot. And therefore, I believe they also have the experience. You should prove your experience to the people. I mean, if you say that you have, let's be blunt here and say, if you tell me that you have an experience, being general secretary and going to elections and won elections, maybe the first question I will ask, yes, in 2016, elections, you had 169 MPs. You brought down to 137. You can't convince me that you've done well on that basis, you know. So if you want to talk of experience and being there, you must then prove it with facts.
With the facts. But he says that if you look at the trend around the world, COVID had hit a lot of economies, incumbent parties were not doing so well across the world, and that partly could have been the case of the NPP, hence the reduction in
the election was 2016, wasn't it?
In the numbers, yeah.
The election was 2016. When was the COVID?
Afterwards, anyway. But
So
you agree that things were not moving so well at that period for the NPP?
I'm sorry I have to sort of go into that. I'll just use it as an example,
right.
You know, that if you come in to convince me that you've done so well, you won one election, you won a second election, and I ask you, yes, you won the first election convincingly, but the second one, I'm not so much convinced. So that argument
would not stand. But let's look at the new General Secretary you have. We'll look at a few other positions, key ones of course, but for the General Secretary position, the belief is that that's the only paid official of the party, as we understand, which means that that role is crucial. You have JFK, Justin Kwadwo Mpiani, who's coming in, quite a young man, many say, 40 years of age, and the belief is he may not be able to deliver. Do you believe in him and his ability to deliver?
You know the age when Dambojo became the general secretary of the party?
Not at all, sir.
It was about the same age. It was even a more critical and more difficult time in 2000 elections. I mean, I don't know how old you were at that time. With Rollins there and then the NDC, it was even more difficult trying to get them out of power.
Right.
But he helped in getting that government out of power. This young man, yes, he's young, but fortunately for him, he's been in the party organization for some time. I understand he was a Ashanti regional youth organizer for quite a time. So at least he knows party organization. And also he's been put in charge of youth employment agency or something.
YEA,
the whole country, trying to get employment for the youth. I think that's good experience.
You
and don't forget also that the about 60% of the electorate is 40 years or below. So I think he's the sort of person who can communicate with them.
You feel he will bridge the gap between the old and the new generation?
I believe so.
But beyond JFK, there's also Mr. Stephen Ntim, who has finally been declared as chairperson of the party. Looking back at, I'm sure you've worked with him, looking back over the years, what do you have to say finally now that he has the opportunity to serve as chairperson of the NPP?
Well, you know, he's been, as you rightly said, he's been with the party as a first vice chairman for about 4 years. He contested, he didn't win, but he wasn't the sort of person who said, I haven't won, therefore I'm withdrawing. You know, he was still very much involved in the party. contested 4 times, I think, before this one. And any time after the elections, he involved himself deeply in the affairs of the party. And if you look at the results now, the party or the electorate believes that at this stage he's the right person for the job.
It's been, he says, more than close to 20 years. I mean, just targeting that position.
Because 4 years intervals, and this is his 5th time running. So he's right about that.
You think it was hard work that gave him this position?
I believe so.
Not luck?
I believe so. And maybe people also got to believe or accept what he told them. Maybe the previous elections, he was telling them things maybe they didn't believe or they didn't think he could do. But after elections, he went around, he's lost, but got himself so much involved in the party, traveled all over the country. So they saw in him something which they believe will help the party in future.
In fact, there are 9 others, in all 10 national executives. When you look at this new crop of leadership for the new patriotic party, and let me just digress a bit. Somewhere last week we heard former President Kwadwo, your boss, talking about how the NPP has changed and evolved over the years. When you look at this new crop of leadership, are you getting a sense that the party is back to where it belongs?
I can't say that immediately, but I believe the party will come back to where it should be. We'll have to see how they're going to operate. And I had the opportunity of talking to some of them, and listening to them, the ideas of bringing the party together. I believe they can do that. If my discussions with them is anything to go by, then I believe they can do that.
Beyond this, some of the candidates are beginning to raise concerns. Some may call them sore losers, but there are genuine problems, for instance, that some of the contenders have raised. Let's talk about Stephen Asamoah Boateng, for instance. He talks about vote buying, which is creeping into the party. He believes that it's a trend, if not checked, could affect the quality of leadership that the NPP has. What do you have to say about this trend? Well, I've not seen any physically, but this trend of allegations of vote buying within
Did he also pay anything? Did he also pay anything?
He confessed to paying something to delegates.
So why complain? if you have paid, if you say I didn't pay anything, that's a different matter. But if you paid, somebody else paid, they look at you and said, we prefer this one. There's a problem. I know there's a problem of monetizing elections. I know that's a problem. But for a losing candidate who agrees that he paid something,
he shouldn't have paid?
No. If you haven't paid, then you have every right to go and complain about it. If you have done it and you believe, he didn't even show whether people also paid, but he believes people also did that. Then what
he says people were going behind him, paying delegates, seeing them and trying to frustrate them.
And he said he also paid.
At least he wasn't clear if it was for the votes, but he put some cost.
Why do you pay? I'm not saying it. He raised some very fundamental issues,
But how do we deal with that?
Which I think as a party we should look at. Not only our party, but generality of political parties in the country. And I believe we should look at it critically and find a way to resolve that.
What do you think would be that appropriate solution to such?
Well, for example, instantly I can think of, say, why don't you expand the electoral base? I mean, if, for example, in a constituency, every card-bearing member is to go and vote, and we have about, say, 5,000 members of the party in a constituency. How are you going to pay money to 5,000 people? So, out of this
it will be difficult to bribe a larger.
How are you going to bribe 5,000? Even if you decide to give everybody what 100 is, that's 500,000.
It's not sustainable that way.
It's not sustainable. And I believe this is one way maybe we'll do it, but I think we should sit down and look at it critically and find a solution to it. Otherwise, this country. So for us, we use political parties to do that. We don't take excuse me to use the word, the crooks. in the country, in future is going to take charge of the country. Drug dealers and whatnot, people who, because they have the money, they will have the money. So yes, it's a problem we should look at, and we should look at it critically across all parties. You know, when I see, I was in my constituencies when they were doing the polling station at that level, and some people came to me and they wanted money to go and see the people. I sat them down and said, "What are you talking about? What are you going to get by being a police agent? You are serving your party and you want to get something, go and get to people for them to elect you. What are you going to get? Are you going to be paid anything?" So you see the mentality. And therefore, if you look at it, it's very important. It's extremely important. And I think if we're able to sort of curtail it, it will go a long way in even addressing the corruption within the system.
Right. Some are also worried that this trend may creep into the next phase of reorganization for the NPP, which is the ultimate, finding the flag bearer for the new patriotic party. The belief is, if you don't check some of the claims Asabi and others are raising, you could have this same scenario play out when it comes to the time to choose the flag bearer for the NPP. Are you worried that this could also creep in?
Well, I'm worried about the payment of the money, but I'm not too much worried in the sense that NPP, you have a lot of discerning people there, and they always choose the right person. I'm not in any way discounting the influence of money in this. It's there. Right. But from 1992, I was deeply involved with President Kufuor's campaign, and I always tell people that if we were money alone, Kufuor wouldn't have been a president.
Really?
Oh yes, couldn't have been a president. There were people who were more resourceful than him. There were people, not only them being resourceful, but people also helping them with resources. He didn't have that. But he went to the people and people realized that this is the man we should vote for. So money is important in politics. There's no doubt about that. But I don't believe it is everything. The personality also involved. And I believe my party that at the end of it, they will choose the right person.
Since we're at it, I guess this is the time to expand that conversation, finding the next phase for the new patriotic party as the flag bearer. Do you have any preferred persons in mind who you'd want to see become president?
I'll have a preferred person, but if you ask me who that person, I'm not going to tell you.
You should tell me anyway.
But naturally, like you see, I tell people like these new officers in the party. When I had the opportunity of talking to some of them, I always tell them, look, the electoral commissioner votes, doesn't he? Or she
does.
She votes. But if the electoral commissioner were to say that I like this person, what would be the effect?
But the point is, you've been in the party for quite some time now to know some of the names.
No. That's maybe at the right time or at the right time. Me, I'm not an officer. I'm not. Maybe at the right time, I'll come on and appeal to people that vote for Mr. A or Madam B, because I believe, from my experience, he will be the best person, not only for the party but for the country.
A description of how the person looks like.
Oh, description! I'll give you his photograph later.
A gentle giant again?
Oh, I don't know.
Anyway, but give us a history to this. Probably you may not want to put out the name out there for very good reasons, but the history behind choosing the flag bearer for the NPP. We've heard the argument from some political watchers that the NPP deals with a certain sort of there's I don't want to call it a lineage, but there's a trend of people that you choose and you take them in turns. We've heard some say, well, that should be discarded and that we should go in for a completely new phase for the party. Some have also made the Dankwa Bozia Dombo argument. I'm sure you've heard all of these things, but having been around from the start of this party, what do you have to say about the line of succession and how the NPP goes about choosing?
I believe it should be left to the party to decide. I sincerely believe it should be left to the party.
Is there any convention, something you followed over the years?
Well, we have conventions. I don't know. I doubt it. But I think the party, in its wisdom, always look at somebody who's been faithful to the party, who's been with them in the trenches up to this time. It's not a convention. It's not part of the rules.
Okay.
But the party in its own wisdom, members in their own wisdom, believe that we have known such a person for all these years, has been with us. We've studied him, and we know what he can do. And so let's give him the power to go and contest on our behalf. And I believe the party will do that.
So is that the idea you subscribe to as a way of finding the
as
next leader?
As a party man, yes.
Right.
I believe you can't just go and plug anybody from anywhere and make that person a candidate. Occasionally, in other societies, it happens. Even here, it may happen. For example, I remember in 2000, is it 2000 or 2000, people were floating the idea, why don't we go and bring Kofi Annan as a candidate, right. Because they look at his style, where he's been and whatnot, and they thought that would be an advantage to the country. But there were some people who were vehemently opposed to that. Everybody has the right to believe in what he wants to believe. So I believe, I think we should look at the people concerned, the contribution to the party. We know them, we interact with them, so we know what they can do and what they can't do. And based on that, we must decide who is the right person, the candidate.
Do you agree when the argument is thrown about that the Dombo tradition has not been favored within the NPP?
Whose tradition? Do you have a Dombo tradition, or Dankwa tradition, or Buzia tradition? And if you're going to follow that one, okay, who represents Dombo tradition? Or who represents Dankwa tradition? Is it where he comes from? Or those who believe in Dankwa's ideas? So I don't.
People should not be claiming these.
So if you are going on that basis, okay, right. say Dombo is from the north, so somebody should come from the north.
For instance.
Dankwa is from the east, so somebody will come from the east. Buzia is from Bron. So what about other regions? What about the Gans? What about the Nzimas? What about the Voltarians? Are they also not part of the party? It doesn't work that way. And maybe if you look at it, some of them might have worked, the ancestors might have worked maybe harder than some of the names we have mentioned. We call it a tradition because we believe in the ideals and the ideas and whatnot. That does not mean that you should say that let's follow something like that. But who represents what? I hear people saying that Mr. Kufo represents Buzia. I say, on what basis?
Right. It's not entirely true?
On what basis? They are not from the same area. Because people are saying that Dombo is from the north, so somebody should come from the north. Buzia was from Bronhafo, or Bron to be specific.
Right.
So how could Kufo be representing Buzia? In a way, we may say that maybe the current president
from the Dankwa.
Right. For me, family and everything. Right. But even that's not right. I don't think that's the way.
So people should not be
at all.
At the party
at all. I mean, if you do that, I think it may lead to the strengthening of the party.
There may be division if that happens.
Of course. If you take the north, I have some people from the north, very good friends, who come to me and say, even the north is not
homogeneous.
Right. So if you say Dombo was from Upper West. So should it come from Upper West, or from Savannah, or from North, or from Northeast? Right. It doesn't work that way.
Anyway, let's talk about breaking the 8. If the NPP is to break the 8, partly your successes will owe to the performance of the party in power, which is the government. What's your assessment of President Akufo-Addo's tenure as president?
You see, we have not been lucky in this second term. We know what happened, the COVID, excuse me, is one of them. There you may be able to influence it. It's here. So what do you do to contain it? So as a government, You like coming out with pay people if they are not working, help people with their utility bills and whatnot. It's on you, but you have a means of influencing it. If you take, say, the war between
Russia and Ukraine,
you have no influence of it. There's nothing you can do about it but to allow it. I'm not in this way saying that we have not also committed any mistakes. We must really accept that we have also committed some mistakes. But these events deepened whatever problems we had, and governments also in their second terms always have difficulty in overcome all over the world, because you take some decisions where people may think not popular, but we are looking to the future, and therefore you may take some decisions, and this may affect you at the polls. So we are in a very difficult situation. There's no doubt about that. But our behavior between now and
the next 2 years,
will determine if Ghanaians believe that yes, we are in difficulties, but we have a program to get us of the difficulties and build on it.
For instance, you have been proposing some of the issues that could turn around the economy. Part of the very strong views that you hold is the fact that if you were, for instance, the finance minister, you would have resigned. The finance minister has responded. He believes he has changed his mind and has agreed with the president to turn to the IMF, for instance. Giving his response that it's like a father leaving his children, and the analysis we're hearing from the vice president, do you feel that he should be giving some more days to stay in that office?
You quoted me right. I said, if I were him, if I were him, I would resign.
You still hold that view?
I still hold that view.
Even in the face of the explanation he's giving?
Well, you can always give an explanation. Why not? And I'm not doubting his explanation. But I'm saying if I were in his position, because I find it untenable to go and sit with the IMF, because I've stated it so many times that that is not the way to go. So what new thing am I going to tell them? Go and say them, assuming they were to ask me. They don't do that. Assuming they were to ask me, oh, why are you now coming to talk to us? Something? Oh, I've changed my mind. Well, I can say that, but what would they think about me?
You feel his presence may affect the negotiations?
I don't know.
Right. But you comparing what happened, for instance, during the Kufuor era, when you turned to HIPIC, and looking at our decision to go to the IMF, for instance, do you feel that the conditions are the same, and that looking at that experience?
When Kufuor came, we were broke. The country was totally broke. The records are there. Even within government, within his government, there were those of them who said, no, we're a proud nation, so we shouldn't go to declare ourselves HIPIC. He listened to everybody, but it's a responsibility. And the books were read to him. He looked at it and told them, look, I'm going to HIPIC. If there's any of you who believe that that's a wrong decision, you have the liberty to resign. And we went to HIPIC, and the outcome we all know. Because we were just broke. We were just broke at that time.
But the circumstances are not the same for President Akufo-Addo.
I don't think
some say it's because of how he's run the country, not doing that in the right direction.
Well, that's some people's belief. Of course, whenever you have difficulties, people assign so many reasons to your difficulties. So that's what some people assign it to.
And we'll be wrapping up shortly, but for instance, we've heard from the likes of former President John Dramani Mahama, who've also waded into the performance of the economy. He believes that the Vice President should also be taking on for that, not just the Finance Minister, but the entire economic management team.
You see, unfortunately, this political system we have, the Vice President is there. Can only remove him by him resigning or vote of no impeachment or an election, And Vice President is not the final authority. Number one is the president. Well, the Vice President may resign and say, I don't believe in any IMF, and because of that, I resign, and they have every right to do that. But he's not directly in charge of the economy.
Some say he's made a lot of promises, a reason for which...
Well, unfortunately,
yes.
Unfortunately, yes. These days, I listen in the morning to some of your stations and whatnot, and they always start by referring to some of the old speeches made by the Vice President and whatnot, and then follow it up with discussions on some of those issues. It's unfortunate, yes. Unfortunately, he did that. Maybe if hindsight would say that maybe if I have another opportunity, I shouldn't behave that way.
Should he apologize to Ghana?
Well, I don't know. It'd be fine if he said, but human beings, we are difficult. But it wouldn't be out of place if he said, well, I was wrong. But it's always difficult, especially for the politician, to come around to say he was wrong.
Right.
Very, very difficult. But it would be a very good to come and say that, yes, I look at these things, some of them, now looking at issues and being involved with reality, maybe some of them.
We'll be wrapping up shortly by taking your words to Ghanaians, but I'm asking a controversial one here. We've heard of the factionalism within the NPP, and some say that if indeed you want to better your chances, this is the time to consider a reunion between the Alan and Bawumia faction. What's your take on having a pair, the Vice President, for instance, and Alan Kwadwo Mpiani run for the 2024 elections?
You are asking me a question which I answered some time ago. I don't believe in that. I believe you must always give the candidate the opportunity to choose and present to the party and give reasons why he's decided to choose that person. Forcing people who may not even be compatible together may not be in the best interest of the party and the nation. So let the people decide who they want to be the candidate. Let the candidate look through the party and say, I believe this is the right person. Explain to the party why he believes that person is the right person. And then the two of them can then work together. That's my belief. People are saying that we should have what we are suggesting. Right. Because the reason for them doing that there's so much tension in the party that will bring people together. In political parties, you can't run away from tensions, especially when it's getting to election. It's part of political process, and your ability to handle that shows
how democratic
you are
as a political party.
Excuse me.
So you believe that it doesn't matter if you have the two, contesting each other?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong about that.
Right.
Excuse me. I sincerely believe there's nothing wrong.
Okay. We need to wrap up. Your message to Ghanaians as we wrap up. But obviously, the NPP is also seeking to break the 8. The president believes it's something that will definitely happen. So perhaps if you're convinced by that vision, probably you may want to share.
Yes, I'm convinced by that, but excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Right.
But we must work towards that.
Right.
You say it, fine. But to convince Ghanaians that what we're saying is the right thing, excuse me, you must work towards that. If you don't work towards that, say it. It wouldn't mean anything.
No.
So
and you can catch excerpts of the program later online. You're still with us here on the Pulse on the JoyNews channel. We'll return to talk about former President John Dramani Mahama, who's taking on the governing New Patriotic Party. It's all coming up shortly. Please stay.